Hello. There are two things which have happened in the last 24 hours which have brought me to the point of reflection today. The first one was I was visiting a friend who's in a bit of a bad way at the moment, and she said to me, "How are you always so happy?" And I'll tell you what I said to her. It's a choice. To be honest, I haven't had a great week. Not everything has gone well. I've had some times of deep thought, but I choose not to dwell on those things. I choose to know Jesus and that I'm still part of his plan. In fact, I base that on some of the things that the Apostle Paul said in his letters to the various churches that he supported. Paul had a complete change of heart, a complete change of life, and everything that he'd previously known suddenly was changed. He was looking at it in a different light. A lot of Paul's life was not happy, was not good. He wasn't often well received in the churches that he went to. His letters weren't well received. But he writes that he's learned to be content. In front of me I've got the final greeting from his letter to the church at Colossae. He says, "For I have learned to be content with whatever I have. I know what it is to have little, and I know what it is to have plenty. In any and all circumstances I have learned the secret of being well fed and of going hungry, of having plenty and of being in need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me." That means I can do all things through Jesus because of Jesus. It doesn't mean that Paul led a charmed life. He certainly didn't. But he's learned to be content, perhaps not happy, but content, to know that he's part of God's plan. Now this takes a lifetime of learning. It's not something that we suddenly fall into. We learn as we go along that even in our hard times, God is still God. He is still there. Now the second thing that happened that led me to this particular reflection, towards the beginning of the lockdown, a friend who I have known since I was at school contacted me and asked if I wanted to join a Facebook group for the people who went to my particular school. Now, I hated school. It wasn't a place that nourished me. It taught me, but it didn't nourish me in any way, emotionally or spiritually. It threw barriers in the way of me developing, it rather hindered rather than helped me to develop into the person that God planned me to be. So when I left school, I turned my back on it. I never went back, and I only kept in contact with a couple of friends, and that only for a very short space of time. This friend I came to know later in life and discovered that they had changed their name, and they were in fact someone that I was in the same class with. So with an air of nostalgia, I thought, why not? Lots of other people are in contact with their school friends. So I joined this Facebook group. I wish I hadn't. It's put me back into contact with people who I haven't known for years and years. People who still talk about the art teacher and male this is and the size of her breasts. People who are unreformed in all their ways. But what really brought me up short this morning was someone who actually I didn't know at school, but complaining about something that had happened more than 35 years ago when they had been bullied. I was bullied at school, so I know what that feels like. And that someone who was now part of this Facebook group had burned her hair. Now, I'm not saying that that wasn't a terrible thing, and I'm not saying that that should not be dealt with, quite the opposite. But Facebook is not the place to do it. And perhaps that person who still feels aggrieved 35 years afterwards needs some counselling. It might help to send a personal message, but probably not. But they certainly need to deal with that unforgiveness that they are carrying. And that was the other part of my reflection. Paul, the apostle, had learned to be content in all circumstances. But that's so much more difficult if we carry with us the burden of unforgiveness. If we still feel that we are hard done by and we haven't been able to forgive people in the past for things that they've done to us, even if it's setting fire to our hair 35 years ago, I'm sure that was utterly traumatic. But it needs to have been dealt with and set down. What are you carrying today that stops you from feeling contented in all circumstances? I don't mean happy. I don't mean we have to be happy about coronavirus, about being locked down. But we do need to know that God is sovereign in all of our lives. And He's not sovereign in those areas where we have failed to forgive those who've hurt or upset or betrayed us. Take some time today. Identify those things that we're still holding on to. They might be things that we can simply forgive someone for, or they might need more work. They might need the help of a counsellor or a Christian friend who will pray with us. But they do need laying down, because only then can we say with Paul, I can do all things through Him, through Jesus, who strengthens me. Keep safe.